Ladies and gentlemen, this is a brief history of Donald Trump, the first 100 days presidency. The first 100 days of Donald Trump presidency begin with his inauguration as the 45th president of the United States, which occurs at noon on January 20, 2017. The 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, was inaugurated on the same day. The 100 days of Trump's presidency was April 29, 2017. Trump visits announces his plan from the first 100 days of his presidency in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on October 23, 2016, before the election. One of the Trump's major accomplishments made as part of a 100 days project was the confirmation of Nate Gorsuch as an associate justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Strangely, President Trump had the advantage of a Republican Party's majorities in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, but was unable to fulfill its major project in its first 100 days and had a approval rating of between 40 to 42%, the lowest for any first-time president at this point in his tenure. Although he tried to make progress on one of his key economic policies, the dismantling of the Don Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, of his failures to repeal the Patient Protections and Affordable Care Act ACA in the first 100 days was a major setback. He reverses his positions on a number of issues, including labeling China as currencies manipulators, NATO launches the 2017 Charlotte missile striking without congressional approval. The North America Free Trade Agreement NAFTA nominations of Janet Yellen as chair of the Federal Reserve and the nomination of Export-Import Bank directors. Supporters claim that as the first to have been elected president in present time who has held neither military or political office, he therefore faces a steep learning curve. Trump approvals among his basic was high, with 96% of those who voted for him saying in an April 2017 poll that they would vote for him again. Near the end of the 100 days, the Trump administration introduces a broad outline of a sweeping tax reform focusing on deep tax cuts. While it is intended to encourage economic growth, where we are concerned from some members of the United States Congress about raising the national deficit. In spite of the sharp declining in gross domestic product GDP in the first quarters of 2017 represents the weakest quarterly economic growth in 3 years. The SAL 500 was near an all-time high, representing a 12% rising from the first quarter of 2016 as investors' confidence remains elevated. All troop has to concede to delay funding from the U.S.-Mexico border war. He had promised, narrowly avoiding a government shutdown a few days before the end of the first 100 days. Its erratic might have contributed to a sharp drop in the number of illegal crossings at the Mexico-United States border. Trump signing 24 executive orders in his first 100 days, the most executive orders of any president since World War II. He also signed 22 presidential memoranda, 20 presidential proclamations, and 28 bills. About a dozen of those bills rolled back regulation finalizing during the last month of his immediate predecessor Barack Obama presidency using the Congressional Review Act. Most of the other bills are small-scale measures that appointed personnel name federal facilities of modified assistance programs. None of Trump's bills are considered to be major bills, based on a long-standing political science standard for major bills. Presidential historians Michael Beschloss said that based on a legislative standard, which is what the first 100 days has judged on since the tenure of President Franklin Roosevelt, who enacted 76 laws in 100 days, including 9 that were measures. Trump is really pretty long down on the list. Trump pledges to do the following in his first 100 days: appoint a judge who will uphold the Constitution and defend the Second Amendment, construct a wall on the southern U.S. borders and limit illegal immigration to give unemployed Americans an opportunity to fill good-paying jobs, re-extend trade agreements with other nations, and crack down on companies that send jobs overseas, repeal and replace the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, commonly called the Affordable Care Act of Obamacare, remove federal restrictions on energy production, push for an amendment to the United States Constitution, imposes time limits on Congress, eliminated gun-free zones, formulated a rules on regulations that for every one now regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated. Instruct the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff to develop a comprehensive plan to protect Americans victim instructions from cyber attack and all other forms of attacks. Wherever. labels China's a currencies manipulators, enforce rules and regulations from China's affairs subsidies behavior, instructs the U.S. trade representatives to bring trade cases against China both in the U.S. and at the WTO, use every lawful presidential power to remedy trade disputes, including the application of 45% tariff consistent with Section 201 and 203 of the Trade Act of 1974 and Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to stop China illegal activities, including its theft of American trade secrets. The first 100 days begin with the inauguration on January 20, 2017 at 12 p.m. This was the third presidential online portal transaction and the first to transition social media accounts such as Twitter. As Trump took the oath of office, the official portal's Twitter's account switches to President Trump with previous tweets achievements under portal's S42 44 points. All 13 million followers of the portal's account during Obama administration slowly transitioning as well. On February 8, when Trump formally announces his 24 members cabinet, the largest cabinet of any president so far, fewer cabinet nominees had been confirmed than any other president except George Washington by the same length of time into his presidency. Trump reorganization of the cabinet removed the chief of the Council of Economic Advisers that President Obama had added in 2009. The directors of National Intelligence and director of the CIA were elevated to cabinet level. During the transition period, Trump had named a full state of cabinet and cabinet review nominees, all of which requiring Senate confirmation except from the White House Chief of Staff and the Vice President. Chief of Staff Vice Presidency. By April 29, almost all of its nominated cabinet members had been confirmed, including Secretaries of State Rose Tillerson, Secretary of the Treasury Stephen Mnuchin, Defense James Mattis, Justice Jeff Sessions, the Interior Ryan Case, Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, Mrs. Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, Health and Human Service, HHS, Tom Price, Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Bencaso Transportation, Ellen Chow, Energies, Rick Paris, Educations, Besties, Devils, Veterans Affairs, Davis, Showcase, Homeland Security, John Kelly's, Directors of the Central Intelligence, Energies, CIA, Mike Pompo's, UN Ambassador Nikki R. Early Environmental Protection Agency EPA scores proved Small Business Administration lenders McCown's own Management and Budget OMB MEC Movares and Directors of National Intelligence DANCOS only. Two, we are awaiting confirmation. Trade Representative Robert Linschoter and Council of Economic Advisors CEA Kevis Asset. James Mattis was confirmed on January 20 as Secretary of Defense by a vote of 98 through 1. Mattis had previously received a waiver of the National Security Act of 1947, which required a 7 years waiting period before retired military personnel can assume the roles of Secretary of Defense. John Kelly was confirmed as United States Secretary of Homeland Security on the first day by a vote of 88 through 11. Former ExxonMobil's CIA Rose Tillerson was sworn in as Secretary of State by Vice President Mike Pence on January 1st. Trump nominated Tillerson from the position as top U.S. diplomat, the equivalent of a foreign minister, on December 13, 2016. He was approved by the Senate Foreign Relations Committees on January 23, 2017, and by the full Senate in a 56 through 43 vote. Nikki Haley was confirmed as UN ambassador with a Senate vote of 96 to 4. On January 26, 2017, when Tillerson visited the United States Department under Secretaries Joyce Annie Barr, Patrick F. Kennedy's Michael Bond, and Gentry O. Smith are simultaneously resigning from the department. Former State Department Chief of Staff David Wade calling the resignation the single biggest simultaneous departure of institutional memory that anyone can remember. The Trump administration told CNN the official had been fired, and the Chicago Tribunals reported that several senior State Department carriers diplomats left the State Department, claiming they had been willing to remain at their post, but has to expectation of saying. On February 10, Tom Price was confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services, HHS, a $1 trillion government department. HHS included National Institute of Health, NIH, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Price, who is a voter opponent of the Affordable Care Act, will oversee its repeal and replacement. He has published an article in the Small Conservative Medical Association, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, to which he belongs, that opposes mandatory vaccination and and continue to argue that the vaccine causes autos, a discredited conspiracy theories that Trump has long espoused. In response to questions from senators at the hearings as to whether he believes all things is caused by vaccines, he responded, "I think the science is that is that it does not." Thank you. This is the brief history of the Donald John Trump is 100 days in office and is failed to repeal and replace Obamacare. Thank you. God bless America.